What's going on, Player Profiler Nation? Welcome to the latest episode of Trade Gods. I am your co-host, although you may have forgotten it's been a while, but I am Matty Kiwoom, and I am joined by my fellow Trade God brethren, the morning man himself, the host of Wake and Take, the Player Profiler social media extravaganza, making up words here now, my man Jason Allwine. What's up, Jay?
What's up, man? Happy to be back. Happy to see you on the other side, man. There is no better time than some Trade Gods action with Matty Kiwoom and Jason Allwine.
We are back, baby. We're very excited for today's episode. Although I did get a piece of information before we went live that's kind of thrown my whole brain through a loop. I'm not going to say what it is, but it has to do with Jason and how he records. So I will leave that to you, our Trade God fans, and you can take that information with of which you could do whatever you want with it. But we have a dynamite show lined up for today. We got 3 trades that we're breaking down, real life trades that are happening. We are breaking them down and talking about the trade markets and what they look like. And then we have 3 buys and 3 sells in season. The buying and the selling is the most important part. Yeah, we could break down your trades, but it's not as philosophical as it once was. The trade gods weren't so big picture thinking anymore. We were in the offseason, but now we want to win. We want to get you guys and you gals ready to rock and roll, and that's going to be a whole lot of buys and sells. So, Jason, what do you say? Should we just dive right on in or what?
I think so. I'm ready.
Let's do it. The first trade that we will be breaking down today comes from a 14-team PPR 1 QB start 10. Team A is acquiring Nelson Agholor and Josh Jacobs, and they are trading away T. Higgins, James Cook, and a 2024 second. Seems like a nice haul if you're trading away Josh Jacobs. But Jason, what do you see this? Which side of the trade are you on here? And maybe if you want to talk a little bit about buying a player that you consider a star like a Jacobs.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the star in this trade is starting to become James Cook. Just kind of the way he's performing these past few weeks and everything. And what's funny, I mean, if you tell someone this trade happened just a few weeks ago before the season kicked off, I mean, Nelson Agholor would be a non-factor, but it's looking like he's at least going to score some points for you if you need it.
Looks like maybe a flex filler, a weekly flex filler, something like that.
Yeah, you know, if someone's out too, I mean, like obviously he really scored the points because Odell was out. Mark Andrews has kind of been unhealthy. It is what it is, but still, you know, he's out there. Josh Jacobs, he's getting the volume, not of course as efficient as he was last season, but you know, it is what it is. But it's T. Higgins is 20 targets and only 8 receptions, scored 0 points in week 1, 4 points last week. Luckily scored 29 points for you in week 2, but something clearly seems off with him, which I think made this trade possible because normally you're not getting T. Higgins, James Cook, and a second for just Josh Jacobs, right, especially going into the season. Especially with everything that was going on with him and the Raiders in general. And the fact that most people know and expect players of Josh Jacobs' running style to fall off a little bit with that kind of volume and production after a season. But I think that this is a nice buying window for T. Higgins. And it's a great opportunity in buying James Cook, who's top 10 in true yards per carry, yards per touch, breakaway runs, expected points added, is 3rd in rush yards this season, is 12 points per game, looking like the main running back for the Buffalo Bills, getting tons of volume. So I'm easily on the second side. I think you're getting some great assets. And I mean, what about you?
Listen, this was a home run for Team B because you illuminated to the most important factor when breaking this trade down. Josh Jacobs was a top, 3 performer last year at the running back position. I still think he's good. Is he the best player in this deal? I think you could make that argument. By the end of the year, we'll be looking at Josh Jacobs as the best player in this deal, but James Cook is surging, and he is surging in a way that I think he is here to stay, ladies and gentlemen. We're now seeing a more than 55% snap share each of the first 3. He's averaging just over 14 carries a game. He's running around just over 20 routes a game, and he's had over 100 total yards each of the last 2 games. And what I am finding so encouraging about James Cook is the fact that the Bills are not just using him in this gimmick-esque role.
No.
They're using him like they used Devin Singletary last year. I mean, Damian Harris and Latavius Murray will get those 1 yard, 2 yard touchdown runs. And that's why I like Latavius Murray this year more than I was expecting. But James Cook is being used as the bell cow. And it's time to start looking at this guy like a bell cow. And one more thing about James Cook. I will say this. He has yet to score a touchdown. And he has finished with 10 or more fantasy points all 3 weeks. That is highly encouraging for a player of James Cook's stature and uncertainty. Let's call it what it is coming into the year. So love this side for Team B. However, I do want to ask you a follow-up question here because we brought it up on the show. It feels like 2 years ago, but it was just a few shows ago. Our kind of game plan on attacking a guy like Josh Jacobs, and my plan was that you should wait for this window because I did believe there would be a buying window because he was so late to camp. He was not necessarily in shape. The football ready NFL game shape that these guys are used to, that he might start off slow, but Josh Jacobs is still every bit of the wide running back one for the Las Vegas Raiders. He is going to be their bell cow. He is going to get crazy, crazy volume. So I do like the idea of buying Josh Jacobs, but this to me seems like you're buying Josh Jacobs last year, week 13. That's what the type of price this looks like as opposed to the price now. Is there a price, or let me ask you this, it's a two-part question, Jason. Are you trying to buy Josh Jacobs? And if so, what give us a general type price tag that you're willing to pay.
Yeah, I think I would be buying Josh Jacobs. I mean, I'm pulling up PlayerProfiler right now, and he's still 5th in opportunity share. Surprisingly, as the 3rd most receiving yards. I mean, did not really expect that coming into the year. And I mean, the only thing is really the efficiency. And as you mentioned, I mean, just wasn't in game shape. I mean, he's been not there with the organization. So I do think that, assuming he stays healthy, that he should get hot, especially towards the end of the season. So yeah, this is a great window for him. I'm not giving up potential superstars and youth like James Cook and T. Higgins, though. I would like to kind of stay within that realm, or maybe just give a draft pick. I don't really want to use an asset that is as good as a T. Higgins or James Cook, really. Maybe a T. Higgins, like if you are really strong a wide receiver and need a running back, like that's okay. But like just regularly, I'm not really doing that.
Certainly an overpay for Jacobs. And this could be one of those things where Team A looks, well, I got Jacobs and he's finished as the running back 7 on a points per game basis. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. But at the same time, overpay is an overpay is an overpay. And this was certainly an overpay. We got Turkey Sub in the chat saying he was able to flip Calvin Ridley for T. Higgins. What do you think about that real quick?
I think a dynasty, you've definitely got to smash that, but I don't know. I almost just want to have fun with Calvin Ridley right now. I don't know if it's great analysis or the right play to do it, but it's kind of just fun and exciting. And he did flash a little bit, and T. Higgins hasn't done that, right? And I mean, but both offenses, the Jaguars, the Jungle Cat teams, they're looking way more disappointing than they were supposed to coming into the year. So it's definitely interesting, but I think it's basically even when you really look at it.
Yeah, I think in a dynasty, you're going to take the youth. In a redraft setting, you're pretty much probably lockstep. I will say this. Ridley's one of his top 3 games probably already happened. I don't think you've gotten one of T. Higgins' top explosion games. So it's not a bad trade, but I also like the way you described Calvin Ridley. Is probably very similar to how Travis Kelce is talking about Taylor Swift. Yeah, we're just having some fun. It's casual. I want to label it. I don't want to make it a big thing. It's just fun. We're having some fun.
What it's about.
That's what it's about, having some fun. And we are moving on to another trade. This is a 14-team PPR Superflex 1.75 tight end premium start 10. If the settings look familiar, it is because, yes, this is a trade that went down in the Trade God Invitational. This is the TGIF trade byproduct. So Team A is getting Calvin Austin and Bryce Young. Team B is getting Brock Purdy. Jason, go ahead and make the argument for trading away Brock Purdy. And is this enough? Did Team A get enough?
I don't really know. I still don't really know. I saw this trade come in, and I wonder why I saw the trade come in, but I saw it come in, and I at least scratched my head because you look at this, and it's like, how did this trade happen? Especially when you look at things through a lens of before the season, with everything going around with Brock Purdy and Bryce Young ended up being the number one quarterback, things looking good with him. I mean, this is, at that point in time, a smash for the team getting Calvin Austin and Bryce Young. But, I mean, as the season's progressed and Brock Purdy has established himself as probably the future of the 49ers, at least for the next few years, I mean, things are looking good. He's been spectacular so far. I mean, he's 19th in points per game, which isn't the best, but he's still second in EPA, 8th in passer rating, getting things done, hasn't turned it over a ton, if at all. 17 points, 15 points, 20 points, 2 touchdowns in 2 out of 3 games, had a rushing touchdown sprinkled in there. He's looked great. He's looked great. But when you're trading him away, you've understood that you've held him through the times of being really cheap. And at some point, you kind of want to offload and see what you can get. And in this case, this was me trading away Brock Purdy. And it was tough to do. It was tough to do. But in my case, I have Kenny Pickett on my team. So I was kind of attracted to Calvin Austin, the way he's been used so far. Let's see, I have the actual numbers: 6 targets the first game, 4 targets second game. This trade was made before this week, but he ended up having 6 targets and a touchdown after this trade came through, which was nice. And we see the utilization there. And he's contributing on special teams as well. So he seemed to kind of earned himself this roster spot and a role. And Bryce Young hasn't started off great, I'll admit it. But I still do think that he has a career ahead of him and that he'll be with a similar floor as Brock Purdy. And in my opinion, a higher ceiling, although it's going to be a little bit of a rockier road to get there. So I took the gamble here, and I'm really curious your thoughts.
So I think what is really important to remember when you're making trades like this is what lens are you looking at it with, and that might seem like a cop-out, but I think it's apt for being good at making trades because there are 2 different ways you can get trades: the bulldozer approach where I want to win now, I want to get the better player now, I want to take advantage of points now. And I think that lens would tell you want Brock Purdy. But there's also the value lens. And the value lens is how a lot of really good Dynasty players stay good at Dynasty, is that they continuously look at trades for value and they don't bull through and look for fantasy points. And I think when you look at it through that value lens, this is a smash trade. What we always forget in fantasy football is what we were thinking 3 weeks ago. We live in these when the season gets going, when the fantasy bullets are flying and we're crawling through the fantasy trenches looking for wins. We live in these incredibly short 3-week windows where 3 weeks ago, CJ Stroud stunk. 3 weeks ago, Brock Purdy's elbow was falling apart. And then you just have to recalibrate. But when you look at this trade through value, you're saying to yourself, okay, you're getting the first overall pick in a Superflex league, the consensus, at worst 104 in your Superflex startup rookie drafts. And I think if you can remember, again, we're stuck in this 3-week loop, but if you can remember before that, let's remember back to 4th of July, having hot dogs, beers, fireworks. It was raining in Massachusetts. It kind of sucked that day, but I still remember it. Imagine seeing an offer come across your ticker. I'm going to give you Calvin Austin and the 104 for Brock Purdy.
Right. That was honestly what made me do it. I was like, you know what? I haven't made a trade in a minute. This is the Trade Gods League. And this is the best offer I've seen for my Brock Purdy. And screw it. I want to have some fun. I want to have some Bryce Young on my team. See what happens.
And that's why I love talking trades with you, because we'll also bring in kind of like that gut feeling part of it, the fun part of it. What I like to call it the vibes. Fantasy is about analytics. It's about football, the tape, the learning of the game itself, but it's also about the vibe. Sometimes you want to vibe out, and this is a vibe out trade. But again, if I phrased it to you, that you traded Brock Purdy for Calvin Austin, the 104, I think people would go, wow, what a smash. But you put just 3 weeks of stats behind those players, and everyone's going to think that this was not enough for Brock Purdy. And I think that's what's important here is you were clearly trading through the value lens because, like you said, you're covered on the now lens, on the points end of things. And I think you got good players. Now, our friend of the show, Cody Carpentier, he sees Calvin Austin's kind of career trajectory potentially mirroring one like Tyler Lockett, where first year he wasn't that good. Maybe second year he's a little bit better, but he's sporadic. He has really bad weeks, but really good weeks. But he could settle in to that type of role maybe one day if Deontay Johnson moves on or whatnot. So, I like this trade. I think again, if you're looking at it through, I need to tier up at quarterback long term. I think you did that, and you also got a player that is usable now. It could be even more usable later. For people wondering, the Dynasty ranks on PlayerProfiler.com at QB have Brock Purdy at 22, Bryce Young at 16. So it's a sizable gap there. So I think that's a good move, and then getting the second asset makes a whole lot of sense. Now, we're going to answer we have a couple of these trade questions in the chat. We're going to get to those in a second. We still have one more trade that we are going to break down for y'all. But before we do, let's take a little pause for the cause and hear about Underdog Fantasy.
Ooh.
It has been 2 years since Josh Larkey paved the way for fantasy gamers to start expecting positive returns from pick'em games, specifically Underdog pick'ems. And how do you do it? Well, you look at a slate and you find a great shootout or a sneaky shootout. You also look for a shit show game. 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in one game. That's right. You can do it. You can do it. And you can 100x your payout on Underdog. Think about week 1. Jets-Bills was a shit show. Did we see the Aaron Rodgers injury coming? No, but we knew the Jets have a good defense. We knew the Bills have a good defense. Why not expect the worst? And the worst is what we got. So if you had gone Dalvin Cook less than, Garrett Wilson less than, Aaron Rodgers less than, Josh Allen less than, Gabriel Davis less than, boom, 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 you can go 6 for 6. Same thing in week 2. Oh, week 2. Oh, sneaky shootout there in Philadelphia. Minnesota's going to be in comeback mode, so we'll go Cousins, Jefferson, Hawkinson, more than. Madison, less than. But also, Swift, more than. Boom, 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 boom. That's how you do it with the Underdog Pick'ems, and you use promo code UNDERWORLD to get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You put in $100, Underdog matches that deposit up to $100 with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go start picking.
Matty Kiwoom joined by my guy Jason Allwine. The blanket is off. We got those spicy takes coming at you. But before we dive into this third and final trade of the night, let's answer some trade questions in the chat. Shane Jacobus, do we trade Kirk? I have Hurts. I'm assuming it's Kirk Cousins. What do you think?
I would put both on the table and go with the best offer. Being totally honest, Kirk Cousins and the Vikings are throwing at a historic rate right now. And I mean, in the NFC North, that's looking like a shootout division. And if it's not a shootout division, it's a garbage game against the Bears. You're really not going to have much of a reason to bench Kirk Cousins at any point in the season. So if you can get a really good return for Jalen Hurts, do it and ride with Kirk. Or if you can get a really good return for Kirk and still be able to ride out Hurts, that's good too. But I'm exploring both and going with the best offer available.
Love it. Lil Bro 17. What's up, Lil Bro? Would you trade London and Warren for Akers and Christian Watson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, let's. What does Drake London have for fantasy points? He had 16 last week. What did he get this past week when they faced off against the Detroit Lions? It wasn't a lot of fantasy points.
It was still okay. I want to say it was like an 8 or 9 or something like that.
So let's just call it 10. Let's go super high with it and say that he scored 26 fantasy points on the season. Christian Watson might come back on Thursday night and just get more than that in one game. And
yeah.
More fantasy points. I mean, That's what he could provide. 5.1. So we're talking about 23 fantasy points on the season. Christian Watson come back Thursday and get all that back. I don't really believe in Akers, but what I do believe in acquiring him now might make some sense because there could be a potential value bump in the near future where you could flip him. So I know the world loves Jalen Warren. I still love Najee Harris. We'll talk about him in a second. As you can see, he is on the screen. But yeah, absolutely, little bro, pull the trigger. Rod tips down. Do I trade Hopkins and Algier for Flowers? 150% yes. 10 more targets this past week. He is on pace now for 140 targets. And I don't want to take credit for this. This comes from Alex Caruso as he was on I think it was NFL game day. I'm not exactly sure the platform, but it's a big platform. He was on it, and I was watching it on TikTok. So shout out to Alex Caruso. He said 140 targets. Guys who have gotten 140 targets, more than 95% of those guys has finished as a wide receiver, top 24 wide receiver. 76%, I think he said, finished as a top 10 wide receiver. So 140 targets indicates at least top 20 season. So yes, I am 100% in on Flowers. Are you taking this trade?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we're starting to see Algier fall off a little bit. And I mean, this Titans offense looks abysmal right now. Ryan Tannehill looks like the worst quarterback in the league.
It does.
And there's Zach Wilson is playing. So
that's true. Yeah, get Zay Flowers. You're not going to be mad about that. Nighthawk, trade DeAndre Swift and Chris. Whoa, okay. Read this wrong. Got to have to recalibrate. Trade Swift for Christian Watson and Pacheco.
Yeah, I mean, I love Christian Watson, and it's looking like, based off these comments, there is a buy window for approximately 23 hours because they kick off tomorrow night. He's making his NFL debut. I'm pretty sure it's the Lions. That's 100% going to be a shootout, and he's going to score north of 20, 30 points. So, yeah, buy Christian Watson right now, everyone listening.
I love DeAndre Swift, but I'm still taking this trade.
Yeah.
Giovanni Castro, shout out to you. Would you trade Swift for Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and a mid-2024 second?
That one's I'm gonna lessen our normal phrase. Instead of 100 for a few $10 bills, this is 50 for 220s and a 10. So it's really not that much of a downgrade. I think it's fine. I think you're getting some good assets. And Rashee Rice is looking to have a good career. I think Hollywood Brown will do better even when Kyler Murray returns. Plus, that second could turn into something. So I think that's a good enough return to do it. But it's a tough choice based on how Swift's playing right now.
GC, don't do it, man. Keep DeAndre. He looks like a bona fide league winner right now. So keep DeAndre Swift. Bronson is in the chat. Trade Etienne, Sutton, and Addison for Diggs and Javonte.
No, I think I'm holding on to ETN, Addison, and Sutton there. It sounds like that person might be interested in acquiring Sutton. I wouldn't mind selling that, but I think ETN and Addison are pretty firm holds right now.
100% agree. That seems like too much for Diggs and Javonte. Go ahead and keep those three players because I think they're all starters in that lineup. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the chat questions. Shout out chat. Shout out everyone who's rocking with the We love you. So let's break down this third trade. It comes from 14-team PPR Superflex Start 10. I had to put this on there because the Najee market is one of the more perplexing ones, one of the more frustrating markets to be a part of right now. But right here, we're seeing Najee Harris traded away for John Metchie in a 24 second. If you have Najee, I'm going to ask this to you both ways. If you have Najee, is this enough? And if you were offered Najee for your Metchie in a second, are you taking it? And are those questions the same? Probably.
Yeah, if I have Metchie in a second, I'm offered Najee. I'm taking the risk. If I have Najee, which I unfortunately do in a couple places, in the Trade Gods League in particular, I am not taking this. I'm just not. Where I think Najee, and especially a player that has fallen off from such a high point, is used best is as a throw in a trade to upgrade, to where the offer comes into the other person and they see Najee Harris's name. It's already pretty close, and it really just throws it over the top. Like if I, for example, used Brock Purdy and Najee Harris for CJ Stroud, that might, get it done because it's Najee. But I mean, if you took away the name from it. Probably not based on the production. However, there's still some underlying stuff here from Najee that I'm not, too concerned about. I think that things could get better, but it's ultimately going to come down to the Steelers. Very tough first two matchups. I was hoping last week we would see some vintage Najee. We really didn't, but still he's second in breakaway runs and run rate and 13th in evaded tackles right now. And that's coming with only, unfortunately, the 29th best opportunity share, and he's only had one red zone touch, which is really, really not good. He hasn't had a game above 65 yards, which is not good. But when he's, I think he had like 16 carries last week. The Steelers offense is average, going to get a little bit better as the season goes on. And he's the guy last year, for example, started off poorly and then got hot towards the end of the year. I can't justify selling this low on him right now.
This is nowhere near enough. And I'm not saying you shouldn't shop Najee, but this is not enough.
Yeah.
This is a 24-second for Najee. Because as much as we are rooting for Metchie, we're going to always root for a guy who's battled what he's battled to come back to the NFL. That's fantastic. But Tank Dell is the guy there. Nico Collins is another really strong weapon there. The John Metchie thing, I don't think is going to become a thing in terms of us wanting him in fantasy. Where Najee, I still think there's a good chance that we see a lot better output going forward. Like you mentioned, some of his efficiencies, his ability to break away runs is still there. But I want to talk about their offense and how defenses are game planning against him. He is second. He goes against 7.2 defenders in the box. That's the second most. He goes against a stacked front 45.7% of the time. That's the most in the NFL. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have seen 11 stuffed runs. That's third. I think once Deontay gets back, once this offense starts becoming a little bit more vertical, Calvin Austin becomes more of a threat going into games where people have to account for him. I think that opens up some more running lanes, and we've seen Najee look good. We've seen some of those punishing runs that we know him to come in love from Najee. And right now, of course, Jaylen Warren is getting his touches, but Najee's still getting the lion's share of the opportunities in terms of what's going on in the league, about 54%. So I personally am holding Najee. This was actually a trade that happened in a league that I do participate in, and when I saw that this was the price tag of Najee, I almost cried because I was like, "Dang it! I should have jumped in that market because if that was the price tag, holy cannoli, I would have taken it with a heartbeat." Because I do think there are better days ahead for Najee Harris. So.
Yeah,
that's going to wrap up the trade breakdowns. But now it's time to get into America's favorite trade segment.
It's time to buy and sell.
So we're going to start with our buys here. We got 6 players, 3 buys, 3 sells. Jason, this guy was one of your buys. So why should people in fantasy buy Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I mean, like all of these, it's ultimately going to come down to price, but I'm still not giving up on Kyle Pitts. I just can't do it. And I see these games every Sunday. He's getting open and he's running really good routes and he's looking very athletic. And believe it or not, he's still 8th in yards per reception and 10th in receiving yards and has the 9th most targets among tight ends so far. You would not think that based on the stories. And he's been first in air yards, air yard share, average depth of target, unrealized air yards, catch rate, contested catch rate. The deep targets are there. I think it's eventually going to hit. And I'm finally getting off the Desmond Ridder bandwagon a little bit here, which means
and that is big news. That is big news.
It is. And so I do think better quarterback days are ahead for him. And at that point, you're definitely not going to be able to acquire him. And in these tight end premium leagues, and in like Scott Fishbowl, he's still getting you like 10, 15 points a game because these catches, you're getting the first downs, you're getting like the big yards from it, and the extra tight end premium. Like he's not getting you the worst points in the world in some of these, higher tight end scoring leagues. So I don't know. I'm buying him. I think you can get a good price on him, and I do think better days are ahead. Look at the Drake London game in week 2, for example, and Kyle Pitts' best game of his entire career was in London 2 years ago. His rookie season had over 100 yards, a touchdown, and they're playing in London this week against the Jaguars in a shootout.
So the bye window's ticking away.
Yeah, you can't always use historical analysis, but in this case, I'm doing it because it helps my argument, and so I'm buying Kyle Pitts.
It's you have to make a tough case when the league you're saying is a good buy candidate. You can't make trades in Scott Fishbowl. Can't make trades in. So
that's true.
But anyway, let me ask you this though: what's your opinion? Dynasty versus redraft?
I think I'm still buying a redraft because you have to. The tight end position is so awful, and he still has week winning upside. He's still, I guarantee it on this episode, he's still going to have at least 2 games this year with over 20 points, at least, right? He's still going to have some of those ceiling games come across, whether it's with Desmond Ridder, whether it's with Taylor Heineke, or whether it's Mike White for some reason, whoever they bring in. But it's going to happen. He's going to have some ceiling games. He's going to win you some weeks. He's going to still finish, top 12 in the position if he stays healthy. And the price that you can get him for right now, I mean, the market on him's low. He's out-targeted by Jonnu Smith, outproduced by Jonnu Smith. Cordell Patterson is probably going to come back this week and get more receiving yards. It's
I think you just reverse sold us. You had us sold on buying, and now we're all like, no.
I'm telling you why you can buy.
I am an absolute sell in redraft. In Dynasty, I think that the price is now at a point where take a shot. I'm going to take a shot because I think also the price tag on a replacement level tight end that you could put in as you're waiting for him to take off is easy enough in Dynasty.
Yeah,
so buy in Dynasty, sell in redraft for me. You're saying buy across the board. My buy is Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson, week 1, 39.4 snap share. Went up to 41.2%, up to 45% this past week against the Chiefs. We saw him get a career high in carries last week. He's had no less than 2 receptions in each of the games he has played as a pro. And who do they play this week? The Denver Broncos, the team that gave up 8 total touchdowns to their opposing running backs last week. I think that Roschon's day is approaching. And if you're in a shallow redraft league, maybe you just have to add him. You don't have to buy. But in other leagues where that window of opportunity is still there to buy, I got to do it, especially in my redraft leagues, because this is the guy you can get into now that becomes a league winner later because we love the talent. The offense stinks, but we've seen running backs be able to perform in stinky offenses. Just remember last year with the Bears. David Montgomery was usable every single week, and Roschon Johnson has all of those qualities and maybe even a little bit more. So if you want a guy that could be your weekly starting running back, buy now before that price sees a little bit of a spike. Anything you want to add on, Roschon, before we get to your rookie running back buy?
No, I'm with you 100%. You've got to buy. I mean, he's going to get utilized a ton. I mean, the pass catching work is there. It's all there. It's going to be good.
And I want to remind people, week 1, 6 receptions, 55 total yards and touchdown. I mean, it's there. His ability is there. So definitely want to buy this. This next rookie running back, I cannot believe that there is even a crack open to buy, but there is. So, Jason, tell everyone why people should buy Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, I mean, you already said it. I don't know why a buy window is available, but it is. Unfortunately, he has not scored a touchdown, and the usage hasn't lined up. But it will line up. It's simple. He started the year. He was used as a receiver. And then had a game where he had like 7 receptions. And then he comes out last week and only has 1 reception, but 18 carries. Or 17 carries and 1 reception, 18 touches total. But either way, he's getting the carries now. We all thought that maybe Craig Reynolds would be used a lot, but no, it was Jahmyr Gibbs between the tackles. It was Jahmyr Gibbs as the running back. And then it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs as the running back and the receiving running back. It's going to be special. Like you said with James Cook, he hasn't scored the touchdown yet, so the points haven't totally been there. But everything else he's averaging 4.5 yards per carry, which is solid. He's 4th in breakaway runs. He's 5th in breakaway run rate. He's 7th in evaded tackles. He's 10th in expected points added. The Lions are running the ball the 6th most time in the league. and he still has the 8th most receptions and targets as well. I mean, everything is there for him to line up while attached to one of the best offenses in the league. The buy window shouldn't be open, but it is, so capitalize.
You got to send offers on Gibbs. Try to buy this. His, production profile screams spike week, screams nuclear week. I think there's like, for instance, I thought this would be crazy a week ago, but I think a Devon A-Chain gets you at the Jahmyr Gibbs table. You might have to add a little secondary piece, but that was something I thought was miles different a week ago. That's something I'd be looking to do. But buying Jahmyr Gibbs, I would absolutely look to buy. Last week, I was talking with some friends, and they were asking me about him, and my kind of gamble was I think you should wait a week because I thought that the Falcons game would be a bit of a sludge. I didn't think it would have a whole lot of fantasy points, so I thought maybe if you wait a week, and then a guy like Craig Reynolds scored or Bam Knight scored, it would drive his price even more down. It ended up working out. He wasn't a big fantasy producer. But if you're a super gambler, want to go crazy gambler, tomorrow night's game does scream under for me. David Montgomery looks like he might return. So if you want to gamble, I could see his value coming down a slight bit after tomorrow night's game. But a player like Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm not risking it. I'm trying to make trade offers now because one big game and that window doesn't just shut. It slams shut, gets locked, bars come on the other side of it, barbed wire gets brought around it. You ain't getting in that damn window. So send out the offers now. Well, forever may you hold your peace. Those are the buys. Kyle Pitts, Roschon Johnson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now let's talk about the players that folks should be looking to sell. I will get us started here with my first sell of the week. It is Dameon Pierce, running back for the Houston Texans. Last week was his best week on the season. He scored 14.9 fantasy points, but that came with a touchdown. I've never really been a big fan of Dameon Pierce in terms of his talent. And this year's really just reflecting that even more. I mean, first 2 weeks, he had a sub 50% snap share. This week in a game where they beat the crap out of the Jaguars, it was a total Dameon Pierce game script type of game. And he still only had a 53.6% snap share. He hasn't gone over 15 carries in a game. He hasn't seen more than 3 targets in a game. He looks like a guy that's going to be super replaceable this year. And I think a lot of people still believe he has the juice. So you can move him now. When you look at his yards per touch, it's 50th. He's 28th in evaded tackles. He has yet to even secure a breakaway run, which if you don't know what that means, it's a run of 15 or more yards. So he has yet to break one of those on the season. I don't think he's going to be replaced in this offense, but I think the philosophy has changed drastically from when they drafted him to now. They are letting C.J. Stroud throw the damn pill. And that's bad for a guy like Dameon Pierce now and long term because they're not going to want a guy like Dameon Pierce as this offense gets better. They're going to want a guy who can kind of do it all. And they're going to have an opportunity. They're going to have some high draft picks this year. They don't have their own, so they won't have a first. That's fine. They'll have an early second. They'll have some thirds. They'll have picks to go ahead and get that running back that they want. So I'm going to use this slight uptick in value, given a good week, to get off any Dameon Pierce shares that I may have. Jason, anything you want to say about Pierce before we move on to your sell?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking into it. I knew that this was the sell thing. I mean, the only metric that he's top 15 in is red zone touches, and yet he only has that one touchdown. And you hinted at it. The ceiling game against the Jaguars, or that game against the Jaguars, was his ceiling game, and he only scored 15 points. And he was outproduced by Devin Singletary outside of the touchdown. It's only averaging 9 points per game. I don't care if the offense looks good. You're not really going to be that comfortable with him in your starting lineup. You're talking about a 15-point max, maybe a 20-pointer if he scores 2 touchdowns. But it's just not worth it if you can get a decent return, which, I mean, I'm sure you're probably in the Rashad White ballpark, for example, with Dameon Pierce.
You're probably not that far off.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear anyone blah us when he has the same exact game but scores twice. Oh, look at 20. If you score 2 touchdowns and only have 20 fantasy points, you ain't that good. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
You should be north of that. So sell Dameon Pierce. Your sell, we talked about him earlier. Brock Purdy. Why did you sell him, and why should our listeners follow suit?
Yeah, I mean, I basically talked about everything already, but I mean, for the most part, it's just he's reached what he's going to be. It is what it is. Those of us who held on to him and waited, it's time to capitalize. He is a high-end quarterback too, attached to a good offense with great weapons, and he'll be a consistent producer. I've just described Jimmy Garoppolo. I've just described Derek Carr and Mac Jones. I've just described basically any quarterback that you could trade Brock Purdy for and get a cherry on top with. And I think that you should do it. Brock Purdy's being treated like a quarterback one right now, but he's a high-end quarterback too. And so just get a good price for him. It'll be okay. Is he going to be good at fantasy football? Yes. Is he really good at football? Yes. But I mean, only one time in his career has he scored more than 3 touchdowns, and it was 4 touchdowns, and it was in the playoffs. He's just simply not asked to do that much on a consistent basis. He's a 2, maybe 3 touchdown a game kind of guy, which is good. But you can get a good return for him right now. The hype is there.
The hype is there. And now the longevity, like the perceived longevity is there. Trey Lance is out of the picture. Sam Darnold's not even a thought anymore. So you've now solidified the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, probably the best team in the NFL. My only thoughts on Brock Purdy, if you're rebuilding and you're not really interested in him being a focal point of your offense, I'd wait to move him. I think that the days are going to go up, and the only reason why I say that, not necessarily based on his production, but I think as contenders take shape, injuries may happen, teams can get a little more desperate. I think you can get even more than what's happening now. I think if you can get like what we talked about earlier, Jason, got Bryce Young plus, that's something you want to explore now. Totally understand. Completely understand that. But I think that if you're really trying to get a massive return and really kind of rebuild quickly, wait a few weeks, wait till one of these contending teams becomes uber desperate for a quarterback. And, obviously we're talking super flex because Purdy is not really going to be used much in your 1 QB, but in those super flex leagues, wait a little bit and then pull the trigger, because I think you'll be able to absolutely smash a Brock Purdy trade.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, week 15, when the 49ers locked down that number 1 seed, or maybe, you had the offseason trading and they're winning these playoff games, that's definitely a high point there too. That's definitely coming as well. So,
yes, sir, it is. My last sell and the last sell on tonight's episode, obviously, QJ, Quentin Johnson. I'm selling now. If you made the mistake of drafting him in your rookie draft, drafting him in your startup, drafting him in your seasonal league, now's your chance to jump off. The role guarantees him having a good week, but no one was really excited for Josh Palmer last year, even though he had multiple good weeks as basically the wide receiver 1. Quentin Johnson's really just falling into the wide receiver 3 role, and I actually would expect a little bit more Gerald Everett than I would Quentin Johnson with the absence of Mike Williams. Quentin Johnson, I don't think he's that great. He's not really a separator. For all the hype that he received in the offseason, has not translated to any type of playing time. His season high snap share came in week 1. It was only 30%. He hasn't seen more than 3 targets in a game. And the Podfather said this, I believe it was in the Top 10 Takeaways show. The wide receivers of the LA Chargers scored 85 fantasy points last weekend. 85. You know how many Quentin Johnson scored? 3.
Yeah.
3. Josh Palmer had a receiving touchdown. Quentin Johnson had 3 targets that made 3 fantasy points, 2 air yards. Now, I think the argument being made for Quentin Johnson is now he's being thrust into the role that best suits Quentin Johnson's skill set. And I think that's the hype that you use to get out from underneath, get out of the Quentin Johnston business. Use that hype that he could jump into a better role use that to get out from underneath Quentin Johnson and get a player that is an actual starter, a reliable starter. Like Quentin Johnson, if you think you're a contender in Dynasty, this is going to sound crazy. Take Quentin Johnson, see if you can get Adam Thielen. I know that sounds awful when you're looking at it through the value lens that we talked about earlier. But if you're in the bulldozer mindset, this guy just had 14 targets, had 11 catches, 145 yards, and a touchdown. I don't see that happening for Quentin Johnson ever. So I think that this is your chance now to get out of the Quentin Johnson business. and kind of give the projectable prospect to somebody who wants to kind of play on hopes and dreams. I just don't think it's ever going to happen for Quentin Johnson. Yeah, he'll have spike weeks. Receivers do. He plays with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has been absolutely dealing this year. He's been making throws that are truly special. Line drive. He will complete some touchdowns to Quentin Johnson. There's no doubt about it, but I don't care. I don't think it's going to be something that you can rely on nor get excited about. So I'm trying to sell Quentin Johnson while I can. Any thoughts on Mr. QJ?
Yeah, I think it makes sense, right? It's just seemingly not going to happen. If it was going to happen, I feel like he would have had a higher snap share than now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Josh Palmer, the quintessential average receiver, right? So it's tough. However, I almost just want to hold on one more week, just see what happens. I mean, this was the whole thesis of drafting Quentin Johnston, was when Mike Williams inevitably got hurt, Quentin Johnston would have some opportunity. Keenan Allen might get hurt in a couple weeks as well. And then you're talking about the wide receiver too. And I mean, admittedly, I wasn't a fan of his until he got drafted by the Chargers, but that opportunity volume is going to be there at some point. So if anything, I might wait for one of those weeks where he definitely has that opportunity. But I also do think you're right in that he's really not going to ever hit the ceiling that a lot of people were expecting. He's more of a gadget player. And if you can get a good return for him right now, before people truly realize that, before, the speculation becomes realism, then go for it. But I do think that there is a little bit of a case to be had about maybe holding on if you're not getting quite the return you want.
That's fair. What I wish you could do is get a DeLorean, go back in time, and convince the LA Chargers to take Zay Flowers.
Yep.
There, because Zay Flowers in this offense would be something special. He would be the guy being groomed to take over that Keenan Allen role. So it's too bad we cannot do that. That's going to wrap up today's show. We see a lot of questions in the chat, so stick around because we're going to do a little overtime session momentarily. So stay here, stick around, and we'll get all your questions answered. But that's going to wrap up the show, The Trade Gods, the newest episode. It was just so good to be back. So good to talk to my man, Jason. So good to talk all these trades. Jason, tell everyone where they can find all of the dynamite work that you're doing for Player Profiler.
Yeah, I mean, all of the social media platforms now at this point, the Instagram, the Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. I'm posting that stuff with some help from Tyler Football, some help from Brandon Llewellyn. They're doing some great stuff. And, of course, Seth over on YouTube. My personal stuff, JFootballWine on Twitter. And then you can find me on Wake and Take Monday through Friday here at 10 a.m. Eastern on this YouTube and all the other socials as well.
You can find me on Twitter at Matty Kiwoom. We got the game plan each and every Saturday, Trade Gods every other Wednesday here on the Player Profiler network of shows. The Future Cast with Theo Greminger is coming out, and it's been hot. The Fantasy Football Market Watch, which I have to give massive kudos to my brother here. The adaptation, the visualization, what you brought it to was so sick. It looks so good. So thank you, Jason, for that. Yeah, you can find me all that. And if you can't get enough of everything that I'm doing, check out the Executives over on Patreon, patreon.com/the Executives, or subscribe to the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel. He's Jason Allwine. I'm Matty Kiwoom. We are the Trade Gods. Make sure to stick around to get your trade questions answered. But we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
Listening to The Trade Gods.
What's going on, ladies and gents? It is the Trade God Overtime Edition. We had a lot of trades going down in the chat, so we thought, what better way to get the people let them feel heard. Let's talk about what the people are going through here in the chat, and we're going to do so here on Trade Gods Overtime Edition. Christopher is in the chat saying he traded Calvin Ridley for Jonathan Taylor. Give that a grade. Give it a A through F grade.
At this point in time, I'm giving it an A. If Jonathan Taylor does not return to football next week, I'm very scared and sad.
Fair. I'm going to give it a B because I think that risk is there. But yeah, this is the type of trade you try to make to get yourself Jonathan Taylor when it seems like a year ago he was impossible to get in Dynasty. Next comes from Draco Juiced. My team is Lamar, A-Chain, Dameon Pierce, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek, Evan Ingram, DJ Moore. His question is, though, do I trade Diggs for Tank Dell, Miles Sanders, and Puka Nacua? That seems like a pretty good haul. Is that enough to trade away Stephon Diggs?
I think so. It's looking like you would be able to start Puka and Tank Dell every single week, and you probably have the argument to start Miles Sanders over Dameon Pierce. You're at least going to be having that question asked every single week. So I think you might actually be giving your roster a bit more upside there. And I think that's a decent enough trade.
I'm making that trade, Draco. Yeah. I think I am, and I love Stephon Diggs. I love your Diggs and Tyreek tandem, but I think that there's a chance that Miles Sanders is your weekly best running back. Of course, A-Chain's going to have big weeks. I just talked about why I'm not a fan of Dameon Pierce long term. So I think there's a chance that Miles Sanders becomes your most reliable back. And then you just backpile a couple of receivers that you can use all day long. Puka Nacua is not going to go anywhere when Cooper Kupp comes back. I think he kind of settles into that Robert Woods type of role, which was great for fantasy. It was a good role to be in. Sean McVay's a genius, and Matt Stafford looks healthy, which is very important. So, yeah, as much as it pains me to trade away my guy, Stephon Diggs, I think this is enough. I think, like Jason said, this might give your team just a little bit more upside. Kyle Grove in the chat, trade Garrett Wilson for DJ Moore and Kyren Williams, full point PPR.
I think on paper you probably have to do this, but something doesn't seem right about Kyren Williams to me. I'm not willing to accept it long term yet, and so I think I might be holding on to Garrett Wilson at least until it is really true that Zach Wilson is the starting quarterback. I mean, they just brought in Trevor Siemian, and they have the bye in 3 weeks. So I think that's when it will be truly reassessed. I think you've just got to hold on to Garrett Wilson. Wide receivers of his stature still find a way to produce somehow. He produced decently last year with Zach Wilson. So I think I'm holding on. I know you're the DJ Moore man. So I'm curious your thoughts and really also what Kyren Williams does for you in this.
So if I'm competing, I'm 100% doing this trade because I do think Kyren Williams is the guy all year. I mean, the way they're giving him the ball, they believe he's their bell cow. They're not giving him anything else. DJ Moore is in a similar situation to Garrett Wilson right now, but DJ Moore is coming off a 16-point and a 13-point game where Garrett Wilson's coming off a 9-point game. So, I mean, you could argue that they're in the same boat. So getting the extra asset, getting a running back that you can play every single week makes sense for me. I do agree, though. I don't think Kyren Williams is their long-term answer. But, I mean, a guy who runs a 4.8 becomes a starter in the NFL. He's doing everything right. He's doing the things that McVay likes to see. So do I think he completely goes away and evaporates in a year? Maybe not. I don't think so. So I'm doing this trade, especially if I'm contending this year. I definitely want to pull this trade off. Nino Pena in the chat. Trade Higgins for Amari Cooper?
These are I think I'm holding on to Higgins here. What about you?
If I'm contending, I'm absolutely pulling the trigger on this.
Okay,
it's just Amari Cooper is a potential Hall of Famer, and he just never gets respect. It's you pull back the hood. You want to see. I know he's had 2 good games now, but you want to see, is it for real? I don't know. He's 5th in air yard share in the NFL. He has the 4th most air yards, 7th in deep targets. They're using him downfield. He's still 10th in unrealized air yards, so there's still meat left on the bone. He's still top 22 in yards per route run. The dude is 8th in EPA, expected points added. He's still incredibly good at football, where T. Higgins, I like the upside, but we've seen the downside. And not to mention, what's Burrow all year? Does he ever fully get healthy where he could be himself? We don't know if that's the case. And I also don't know if T. Higgins is part of the long-term future of this team. He hasn't got a contract extension yet, has he?
No, he hasn't.
No. So, I mean, he could be in a worse or a less off situation next year. So give me Amari Cooper, especially if I'm trying to win. D's nuts. My name is Jeff. My name is Jeff.
These nuts.
Broadway or James Conner rest of the season?
I think you've got to go with James Conner. And I mean, they're getting similar volume, but I mean, the Cardinals offense is honestly being kind of surprising. And Rachaad White is still not hitting those efficiency metrics. And so I think, given, I'm assuming in this case, we're expecting, full health and everything just going the way it's going. I'm going with James Conner. I mean, especially with Kyler Murray coming back at some point, the offense gets even better.
In redraft, this is a smash James Conner for me.
Yeah.
He might get hurt, but any running back is capable of getting hurt. So give me James Conner. He's been producing even with a terrible offense. Noah Bonecutter. Ooh, Noah Bonecutter. Sounds like a wrestler. I like that. Kupp and Kenneth Walker for Higgins, Tank Dell, and Zach Moss. Which side do you want?
I want the Kupp Kenneth Walker side 10 out of 10 days there.
Me too, 100%. And I did have a Zach Moss in the Market Watch article or thread this week because, like we mentioned, Jonathan Taylor gets traded. Zach Moss could stick around. I love Tank Dell. We still believe in T. Higgins, but I mean, Kenneth Walker is a stud. He's probably your dynasty running back 2 or 3. Now that he's proven that Zach Charbonnet is not going to take away what he can do, and their offense looks so good right now. And Cooper Kupp is a week away from reminding us why people truly value him in fantasy. So give me the Kupp and Kenneth Walker side. Dude saying, hello, guys. Joined a bit late. No problem because we're busting out the overtime for our listeners. We was asking if we addressed the Garrett Wilson situation. Should we hold Garrett Wilson with the Trevor Siemian signing? We talked about that, but let me put it this way to you, dude. If Trevor Siemian is your answer, you haven't solved the problem. So I would say how you feel with Garrett Wilson, with Zach Wilson, you should feel fractionally better with Trevor Siemian around. And that same goes for Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. Yeah, they're better than Zach Wilson, but man, there's no answer out there, or else they would have answered it, no doubt. Chris Best says trade away Olave and Swift for CMC. This is a blockbuster. What are you doing here, Jason?
I think you've got to go with CMC, but I'm really not a Chris McCaffrey guy. I have him pegged as a sell, but I feel like, well, you know what? No, screw it. No, give me Olave and Swift. I'm sticking with my gut here.
This is what I'm saying. If you're going to sell CMC, this is the return you want. A guy who's producing like Swift and a second round pick just 3 weeks ago in Chris Olave. Chris Olave is a stud. Kyle's also asked about Garrett Wilson. We just touched upon that. Hanson right here. Who wins the trade in the full PPR league? Brian Johnson and Josh Downs, or Waller and Josh Palmer? A couple of Joshes here.
Oof. Wow. I guess if everything is going how things are going, the Waller side, really, I mean, I think that eventually clicks if he stays healthy. That's really the big thing. But I would rather have Brian Robinson, to be honest, based on how he's playing and the usage he's getting. It's a very, very tough one. Josh Palmer's getting a ton of volume too, it's looking like. I honestly hate this question with a passion, if I'm going
to. This pains me because me believing in Brian Robinson means I have to start letting go of Antonio Gibson. But yeah, Brian Robinson's look great. And not only has he just been getting the volume, but he's been he's been good. He's looked better than we thought he'd be. Josh Downs is coming off for a double-digit target week. I'd rather have Brian Robinson than Josh Downs. Darren Waller does, as good as we thought he'd be, he hasn't been there yet. And there's always that injury risk with Waller. And when Palmer ends up being the second piece, no, I'd rather have Brian Robinson. Give me the running back and give me Josh Downs. Are we buying Christian Watson, Jason?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we talked about that right at the end of the show, really, as we kept getting questions about Christian Watson, or that might have been the beginning of overtime. It's all blurring together. But yeah, it's looking like the price is cheap. We both expect him to hit that ceiling. Romeo Doubs had a 2-touchdown game. Jaden Reed had a 2-touchdown game. Luke Musgrave is becoming a thing. Just imagine what Christian Watson is going to be. Special.
I am definitely buying Christian Watson. Shout out Justin from Facebook. Shout out Justin. Would you use a first priority pick on Josh Palmer? His wide receiver depth isn't great, but he can get by without him. What do you think?
Assuming it's with the priority picks, as the question has phrased, I think I'm holding off. I think that there will be someone better off, especially if you can get by. If you couldn't get by, you need this starter right now. I think that you could do it, but I definitely think there'll be some more ceiling out there, and you've got to hold on to that first priority pick basically until you have to use it, because once you use it, it's gone. Someone else is sitting on that number.
Once you use it, you do lose it, unfortunately. This is how I will phrase it to you, Justin. If you are 0-3, no, I would do it. I would do it because I think you need immediate scoring. You need to win soon. But if you're 2-1, 3-0, let it ride. You don't need them, so I'd get by without them. Bronson is back in the chat. What's going on with you? Oh, shout out to you. We talked to you earlier on the hurdle. Trade JT for DK Metcalf. He's 0-3.
I guess if you're 0-3, you've got to go for DK Metcalf just for the 1 week, try to win. But I mean, if you had said you're 0-4, you asked us again, I think I would say just wait for Jonathan Taylor. But it sounds like you need to get things right now.
Yeah, and the fact that you're saying you're 0-3, I'm assuming it's. I think because if you're 0-3 and it's Dynasty, then I wouldn't. I'd rather keep the JT share.
Fair.
But if it's redraft, I would make this trade because I think even if JT comes back, DK's in the range. It's not like you're doing it for Josh Palmer. You're not selling it for a flash of the pan. You're selling it for a legitimate receiver that has mainstay power. So I think I'm doing that. Go ahead and make that move. Brent Clark in the chat. He's rebuilding Superflex. He traded Deshaun Watson for Kyler Murray straight up. Which side do you want?
Oh, yeah, Kyler Murray. It is looking like Deshaun Watson isn't returning to Deshaun Watson of old. Is he, kind of looking like a decent floor? Kind of, to be honest. But Kyler Murray still has that ceiling with or without the Cardinals. And the fact that you're a rebuild, this just brings it home even more for me. Great job getting Kyler Murray.
This is 100% the move to make if you're in a rebuild. Kyler Murray was a pretty much damn near consensus top 5 quarterback in Dynasty. He's going to come back. And next year, could he come back with Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah.
It's certainly possible. And, an elite level tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely in the realm of possibility. This is a great move to make. Brent, way to do it. Who do you prefer, Jason? Calvin Ridley, or Michael Pittman?
Michael Pittman, only receiver in the NFL to have 8 or more receptions in the first 3 games.
For me, it is Michael Pittman now. For me, it has always been Michael Pittman. Yeah. So give me Michael Pittman. Last question, then we're going to get on out of here. Trade Gods Overtime Edition. Jack Gorskowski. I think I know that. Gorskowski. Jack Gorskowski. Shout out to you, Jack. He traded away Puka and Kyle Pitts for Hawkinson. Dub or L's in the chat, Jason?
Falcons hat on, L. Falcons hat off, W.
Fair. Hey, at least you're honest. This is a dub. Jack, this is a clear dub for me. Selling high on a guy like Puka. You may not get much production out of Pitts, but hey, they are going to London like Jason mentioned, so it's possible. But no, this is a clear dub for me. And to be honest, this was a clear dub for everyone here in Trade Gods Overtime Edition. There's a lot of fun answering your questions. This might become a regular. Listen, if you guys and gals in the chat keep those questions firing and give us a laundry list of trade questions to break down, maybe we do a little overtime session each and every week. He's Jason Allwine. I'm Matty Kiwoom. We are absolutely the Trade Gods, and we will see you next week.